And former deputy independent counsel and Fox News contributor Saul Wisenberg and Fox Business senior correspondent Charles Gasparino. No two better gentlemen to have here. So let me start with you. The decision did not even address what to do with the refunds. President Trump says, I don't know where it's going to go. Perhaps it's going to play out in courts. Where do you see the question of refunds going?
Me?
Well, I think it is going to have to play out in the courts, but there's no, it's really not the Supreme Court's function. They're not equipped to decide what to do about the refunds. Perhaps the president should have listened to a different set of advisors about which statute to use to impose these tariffs. There are plenty of statutes that gave him explicit authority, to impose these kind of tariffs, but IEPA was not one of them, and surely somebody must have told him that.
And so, Charlie, what's your reaction to this hearing? And to Saul's point, obviously the president's now gone to Plan B and Section 202 to 232 to whatever it is in the 1974 Trade Act actually will give the president that power.
Well, I'm only as good as my sources. I talk to CEOs and lawyers about this, and here's what they're saying to me. It's confusion. Nobody really knows. Like, if you asked Walmart right now, what is the plan going forward? They would be like, not sure. Can you sue? What court do you sue in? Presumably, you sue in the court, and this is kind of what I'm hearing now, that kicked this to that made the ruling that eventually kicked this to the Supreme Court. And I would ask my legal counsel here, that D.C. Circuit Court will be ruling on the various refunds. But again, this is going to take a long time. And here's what I don't understand. If IEPA is unconstitutional because, basically Congress has to be involved in any of these actions involving the budget, involving fiscal, involving money, how could any of these other acts really step in and be legal, be constitutional? And that's kind of what I'm hearing from my sources. Like, they don't understand why IEPA is unconstitutional. And this, for example, 10% diktat from the White House is constitutional. So a lot of confusion, even confusion on how they go about getting the refunds, including which courts. Presumably, it's that same D.C. Circuit Court that ruled against the president that will be handing out these refunds.
And you're right, Charlie. It is confusing. And for those of us going down the rabbit hole with this actual case, it's fascinating because you actually learn that IEPA is initially created to roll back essentially what Nixon was doing based on a tariff power from 1962, and yet now it's being used now. But without getting lost in the weeds, so let's go forward with this 10% under the 1974 Trade Act. Does that stand on legal ground? We know it gives the executive power for 150 days to tariff up to 15%, but after 150 days, it sunsets without congressional authority. What's to stop the president from just doing it again, doing a new one?
Let's go back for a minute. The court did not rule in any way, shape, or form that IEPA was unconstitutional. The court ruled that it did not give the president the power to set these tariffs. There are plenty of other statutes that do. So the sources are incorrect that say they're confused that IEPA is unconstitutional. IEPA is unquestionably constitutional. So that's number one. In answer to your second question, under the statute, the president is now going to use to impose the 10% additional tariffs. Congress, after 150 days, must act. There must be some affirmative act by Congress to say the president can go beyond that. So he can't just automatically keep using the same statute, if I read it correctly.
Well, but that gets to the confusion. I mean, let's be real clear here. We are on really uncharted grounds when the president just steps in without constitutional mandate and imposes tariffs across the board like this, no doubt. By the way, all these big companies have lots of legal counsel, and if I'm confused and they're confused, this is confusing. and one other thing, okay, the Congress did not say IEPA was unconstitutional, but excuse me, the court did not say IEPA was unconstitutional. It clearly called into question the constitutionality of a unilateral use by the president of this type of power. And that's where this gets murky for companies. Does it get challenged again? And, one thing about the economy is that these companies, they like some sort of certitude. They like to know how to plan. And I think that's one issue here. But one thing we're not factored in here is how if the president just can't unilaterally make impose tariffs, that's probably good for the economy. That's probably why the markets did go nuts.
I was saying that.
Did not go down.
I was saying that earlier, Charlie. If indeed the refunds go back to American companies, you talk about a roaring economy, it's going to roar like a tiger. Lastly, before I run out of time, Sol, perhaps you can weigh in on this just quickly, and that is these trade deals with scores of countries that we have now gotten into, including China, where the president will go to in March to visit. Do these trade deals in the wake of the Supreme Court, are they still binding? Do they still hold despite the ruling?
Nobody knows that. I think the administration, from its perspective, is going to act as if they are still binding. But somebody could certainly challenge that in the lower courts. One of the things about this opinion is the Supreme Court said these are all questions for the Court of International Trade. They're not questions for the regular district courts.
Indeed. Charlie Gasparino, Sol Wisenberg, thank you so much for your great insight as we continue to try and figure out where this is all headed. Have a great weekend, guys.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.